Welcome to another vlog. This is part 2 of the power station rebuild and expansion series. Last vlog, part 1, we got in and got the carcass or the case made, and we also got the power into it, or the computer power supplies, server power supplies, what have you. So this part's all done now. What we're going to be focusing on in this vlog is I've got switches, I've got some LED lights that go in that hole, plus all of our connectors and stuff that go on the back. We've got to start getting those wired up, and it's nothing really too complex. Like here's one of my 4-button connections here, and we're going to be starting out going through all of these, getting all the 4. And I got some 2s over there. You know, I only have two switches on. We got to start getting the wires soldered onto the back before we can get them into the box and start making our connections. So I'm just going to be sitting here cutting out lengths of wire and soldering onto the back of these. That's going to be part 1. And good day to you all. Spent most of the day today getting the wires soldered on to the back of these 4 jacks. I got my emergency lighting, my 3 volt, my 5 volt. So we got those in and they're attached. Now last vlog, part 1 of this series, I mentioned that this was going to be a wiring nightmare. Figured I'd prove it. There's all the wires from those 4 jacks that I just attached. And I've got to run them. I got a bank of wires coming out here on this side. That's for my emergency lighting. I need to get them ran, trimmed up, and attached to this power supply. That's the one tied to the emergency lighting switch. These I've got to get sorted out. Some of the wires, the silver wires, which are my negatives, will get ran directly to the power supply and hooked in. The others will eventually run up here to the switches and get tied in for a per switch. And those I'll just bundle and stick to the back of the box for the moment, because I won't be ready to do those until I get the switches in. But I think tonight I'm gonna, or right now, before I do the switches that goes in that section, I'm gonna work on trying to get this wiring mess straightened out. And it's only gonna get worse. We made some progress last night. I was out here in here to about midnight, and as you can see, the rat's nest isn't so much of a rat's nest. It's still a rat's nest, but not quite as bad. I basically worked on these jacks here, got them all hooked up. That's my emergency lighting, and right now they're running directly to the power supply and they're hooked up. And then that power supply is tied to the switch up here. I have not tested them yet, and I won't do it until I get my wires cleaned up. But I also got over here, I got my 3 volt, I should say my 3 volt and my 5 volt. I need to get my negative wires, or my ground wires, or however you want to term it, hooked up to the power supply. These gold copper wires are the wires I'm going to be needing for my switch, and I won't be hooking those up until I get ready to do the switches, which will be a while. So today we're going to work on getting these hooked up and mounted and put into place. And then over here I got to get these out. These are my 2-button switches. And I gotta get them wired up and mounted, you know, obviously on the other side. They're not gonna be on the inside. And get those wires ran. Trying to get that back wall totally done today. That's the goal. Whether we make it there or not, that's another story. It's taken about 6 hours. But I've got the emergency lighting, the 5 volt, and the 3 volt all wired up, minus their switches. I've got my ground lines and my positive lines for the emergency lighting, which I showed you earlier this morning. Those are already done. I've been working on this power supply. And what I've got up here in this mess is I've got my negative feed, or ground line that I'm going to need for the LEDs. This here will take the power from the power supply up to the switches, once I get the switches in. And then I've got 2 rolls of wire here. Yeah, 2 rolls. Hard to see it there. That will take the power from the switches, when the switch is turned on, down to the fittings. And I did the same thing for the 5-watt. And they're all wired up to the power supply, ready to go. And when I get to do the switches, I can start, connecting wires up. My next chore now that I've got those done, is to work on the 12-volt, which is all these holes here. And as I showed you, I got the 2-prong switches. I've got to start getting the wires soldered onto them and getting them in here. And then getting the wires for them will go to these 2 silver bars here and here. Each pair of bars goes to a computer power supply down there. Between last night and today, over the last hour or so, we've gotten the whole back panel finished. Now you saw me wire up the back side of these, and I haven't gone any further on that. I've been working on these here. These are all the switches for the 12 volt, and while this side is done, just like I did when I did those, I've got a mess on the inside I've got to take care of now. As you can see, all the switches on the outside, all the wires are in here. Now I've got to get those folded and placed where they belong on the power bars over here, and on that one over there buried. But we're making progress. It's going to take some time to sort the wires out and get my I'll be hooking up my negative leads, the black wires, to the bars. The red wires will end up going up here and attaching to the switches and the LEDs once I get those into place. But it is going to take some time. Not a bad day today. We made some progress. We got the get over here. You can see them a little bit better. We got all the switches on the back. So those are done. And we got in here to the rat's nest that it caused. And we got all the negative, or aka ground wires, ran over to the prospective bars. This little cluster here will go for the LEDs up on the lid once they get them in. And did the same thing over here. Now all these red wires that we got left, and it helps if I show them, huh? Probably wonky camera angles, I apologize for that. But we got all these red wires left here, and these all end up running to all the switches up there. So it's going to be interesting. Tomorrow we're going to get started on the lid. We got to get the LEDs wired up, we got to get the switches wired up, and then get them in and get them all hooked up and wired. It's going to take a couple of days to get all that done. Been working on the 12 volt side on the lid. Had to make up the LEDs that will go along with the switches on there. I got enough of them made up to do just the 12 volt side. Now I've got the box on its side because it's easier to work on the lid with it on its side. If I leave it sitting the way it normally is, then I have to do everything standing, and I don't feel like standing all day long. I want to be lazy. Right now, I've got the, like I said, I've got the box on the side so I can start getting the LEDs installed for the 12 volt. I've got the chains off for the lid, which allows the lid to fold back all the way. Now, I'm doing that on purpose. Actually, I'm being cautious with this. If I get the LEDs in and do all their attachments with the lid attached to the chain and not fully open, and something down the line happens to where the chain breaks and the lid falls back, it's going to rip the wiring all to hell. If I install the LEDs with the lid fully open, in other words, without the chains being on, I can make my attachments, but the only drawback to it is when I put the chains back on, there's going to be a lot of slack down here where the connections are. That's something I'm going to have to live with. I don't want to put any more stress on the joints or anything with the wiring than I absolutely have to. So I'm taking the precaution. I'm building in, what will be slack when they make their connections. But like I said, I got the LEDs for the 12 volts all assembled today. I'm going to get a few of them put in, but I won't get them all connected. Tomorrow will be the connecting phase. It's been several days, but we've made a little bit more progress on the box. We got all of our LEDs in, which still need to be wired to the switches, which aren't in yet. But all the LEDs are in, which creates more of a wiring mess on the inside of the lid. Now I did take the negative, or aka ground wires from the LEDs, and I got them all wired into their spots where they go. The 3 volt, 5 volt look the same, and then the 2 runs of the 12 volt look a little bit differently. And I mentioned in an earlier segment that I was going to have to leave the ground wires, or not ground wires, but all the wiring loose here in case the chains ever broke. And it did create some slack. It's going to be droopy. Our next chore now is really the last thing to add to the box, and that's the switches. We gotta get the toggle switches in, which basically consists of doing just like I did on the LEDs, and I'm going to solder some leads on, probably about 6 or 7 inch leads, and then once they're installed I can go through here and solder all the connections up and get them ran to where they go. I did want to note too, sorry, a little wonky camera, on the LEDs, I bought some bezels, and it's a little black ring around the LED. Probably best to go this way. You can see them a little bit better, but they're tiny. They're just a little plastic ring that goes around that the LED fits into, that makes them snug in the wood. Putting them in, they're snug, from the outside out here. But from the inside, I was noticing, I was working on the wiring, if I gave any sort of pressure, pushing out, they wanted to pop out. So I went and took some hot glue and shot a good dab of hot glue in all the holes back here after I got them into place. And that seemed to help anchor them into place a little bit more. But anyway, we're going to leave this sitting off to the side for the moment, and we're going to start working on those switches, getting the leads soldered on them. Last of the components have been assembled and put in, and that was the switches. We've got all the toggle switches put in. So we've got the box constructed, we've got the power supplies inside, we've got the master power, the emergency switch, and then all the switches that control all of these all assembled. Now that leaves the final wiring on the inside. We got the back of the switches and the LEDs, we've got all the wiring from the power supplies. Now the fun part comes. We've got to start matching the wires from those wires from these to their switches, and getting them all connected, and then getting the switches hooked up to their power feeds. It's going to take a while, probably a couple of days. Well, the hard part's over. We've got everything wired. I've got my first 12-foot run there, or 12 volt, excuse me. Another 12-foot run there, our 5 volt, and our 3 volt, and then our emergency lighting is all back here. Everything's wired and should be good to go. I've got the top all put together and done, and I've gone through already And I just turned on the master power, and I've tested the switches. You see the lights coming on. I turn the switch on and the LED comes on. That means there's power going back to its appropriate jack. Now I've turned them all on, and it takes a while to do it. And so far I've had problems with one LED, and it's here on the 5-volt side. And it's this one here. Notice when I turned it on, here, turn that one off, okay? When I turned this toggle on, the LED did not come on. Now that could be a couple of different things. It could be simply that a solder joint for the LED went bad, or the LED itself went totally bad while I was messing with it, trying, you know, to get it in and get it all wired. It could also mean there's a bad connection on the switch, barring it from turning on. Or the connection from the switch down to the power supplies is not working. So what I'm going to have to do, and it's something I need to do anyway, I know the top front of the board all works except for that one LED. But what I need to do now is I'm going to get one of my spotlights out. I can go through and I'll test each jack. I'll turn on one switch and then test its connection back here, make sure the LED turns on. I can do that with a 12 volt. And then I've got some battery operated strobe lights that I bought eons ago. I converted over to 5 volts. I can get one of those out and go through and test all my connections. And when I get down to that one switch down there that has the LED not working, I can throw the switch, and if the spotlight comes on, then I'll know for sure that the connection's fine. If it doesn't come on, then there's a problem with the connection somewhere. Either the switch is bad, or there's a bad connection at the power supply, or I have to trace it back. If it's just such a thing as the LED isn't working, technically it wouldn't take all that much to do it, but I could get in here. Let's see which one is it. It was this one here. I could get in here and just put a new switch in, or put a new LED in, and then just wire it in. It wouldn't take all that long. More than likely, I probably won't even screw with it. You know, as long as I throw the switch and it works on the back, that'll be fine. But master power works. As you can see, everything's coming on. So master power works. Now the master switch for the emergency lighting. When I throw that, the computer power supply for it is coming on. So I know the switch works as far as the computer power supply. Now whether my connections from the power supply up to its jacks back here where I plug the lights in work, I won't know. And I can do the same thing as I'll do with the 12 volt side, the red switches over here. You know, when I get my spot out to test these, I can hook it into the emergency lighting bar on the back, you know, and try all my connections and stuff and make sure they fit. So I've got to do that, yeah. And then the other thing I want to do is I need to label them or number them. In other words, like this switch here would be, say, switch number 1. I need to find out the jack on the back and label the jack number 1. That way I'm plugging, and I'll label the switch and I'll label the jack back on the back. That way I know what's where. I'll probably label them off to the side. So just some labeling and what have you. But other than that, you know, everything's working now, so can't really complain other than that one LED. So, you know, project's pretty much done. I'm not going to go through and show you the testing phase on it and the labeling. I mean, it's going to take probably about an hour to go through and test and label everything, you know. So I think it's about time to bring this vlog to a close once I get everything turned off here. With this project done, it does open up 2 more projects affiliated with this light box. The first one is a circuit breaker in our circuit breaker panel that this will be plugged into. Let's see, get those all off, get the master power, turn that off. Is the circuit breaker box over there in the shadows, which you can't see. Right now, our outlets are all set for 15 amp that we use for running the Hon. The outlet on the front of the house is on a 15 amp breaker. Problem is, it's tied into the same circuit as our living room. And these power supplies in here are going to trip that breaker. For the basic reasoning, each one of these draws 9.5 amps. So if I have them both running, it's what is it, 19 amps, and then I got probably about another 2 to 4 amps here. So I need a 24 amp service to run this power box. If not, when I go to start plugging things into it and turning them on, it's going to constantly blow the breaker. So one project I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to upgrade the circuit breaker, and that's relatively easy. Past that, the other project I've got to do is the emergency lighting itself. Now, you guys know, early November, I went in and made these up. These are my prototypes for my floodlights, and a little dusty there. Now you can see them better. But these are my prototypes for my floodlights. And then I went and made up a series of these, which we are selling on our Etsy store. Look for Haunted Treasures on Etsy if you need floodlights, spotlights, LED accessories, spices, my mini skulls. We got 4 or 5 different sizes of skulls, some plaques, some necklaces, all up on Etsy. Come visit. I've got a lot of people. Favorite the store, haven't had any sales yet. I'd like to sell a few of these. But anyway, I want to do the emergency lighting, same style. You know, the ones I made over there for the garden and the ones I'm selling on Etsy are red, green, blue, and flickering yellow. I need some with white LEDs, and I'm thinking I'm going to need about 25 of them. So I need to make up 25 more of these with white LEDs in them. That's going to be a project for later this summer. So I got the circuit breaker and that. For right now, I'm not going to worry about making any more of these up. Our next major project is I've got 2 pairs of columns to make, and that's going to be our next vlog series, I should say. It's going to be probably a 4-part vlog. I've got an arch that goes from pillar to pillar. I need to make up 2 of those. I've got 4 pillars to make, 2 for each set, 1 for the entrance, 1 for the exit. And then what was the third one? Oh, I got layering skeletons I'm going to make. Each pillar is going to have a layering skeleton. And then I'm going to try doing a hinged gate, similar to what SK Austin did again. I'm borrowing from SK a lot this year. First with the staff with the eyeballs, now I'm going to try to do some gates. I like the idea of how he did his. That's why I'm kind of borrowing it. You know, I like the idea of, in the past for our entrance and exit arch, I just took a section of 5-foot fence and zip tied it, and it looked tacky. I want something a little bit more dressier, so I'm borrowing the idea, but I'm putting my own twist on it. So you know, that's going to be the next vlog series. It's going to be the pillars. I've already got parts on order and stuff for what I'm going to be doing. So, but other than that, I'm calling this project done here. Like I said, I got testing and labeling, and we'll get that done, get it up on the workbench and stuff. And past that, this project is finished and completed. So stay tuned for further project vlogs to come along. We'll say stay spooky and stay toxic.